Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Hello, my name is Tom.
Hi, Tom.
And I'm glad to be here this afternoon at the Al-Anon Luncheon. It's a treat to be in San Diego, but I have been in San Diego crazy, and it's nice to be in San Diego not crazy. And the company usually is the indicator there. When I'm hanging out with people in recovery, I am less dangerous to myself and to others, so I'm glad to be here. And I want to welcome you. Some of you may be new to Al-Anon, and Al-Anon is a subtle program, and what I'll do for the next while is talk about my own experience and how Al-Anon became useful to me and interesting to me. And if there's anything I say that you disagree with, that's okay. You don't have to tell me about it. You can work it out with your own sponsor later on and let me go home. I have been at meetings where, you know, I said something and someone had to clear the, well, please. Life's short. I want to thank folks for the invitation to come down here. This can be a busy weekend for me, and I'm glad that I'm able to be here today and not do very much other than hang out with the desperate and the crazed, which is fine. I'm almost 63 years old, and I've been coming to Al-Anon for 25 or 30 years. So it depends on how you count, you know. It's kind of like, how long have you been smoking marijuana? 25 or 30 years. Hard to know. It's so subtle. And it took me a while of coming to Al-Anon before I realized how badly I needed Al-Anon. I grew up in San Jose, California, and alcoholism all over the family on both sides. My father's family were pretty much Irish Catholic Democrats, and my mother's side of the family were Swedish Lutheran Republicans, and alcoholics everywhere, but each family dealt with it a little differently. On the Irish Catholic side, they didn't call them alcoholics, they'd call them characters. So characters. And they would say things like, Sean is sure a character, isn't he? And it took me a while to understand that my family spoke in code. And I didn't understand that. I usually don't do that myself. I try to be direct. If I say something, there's not 10 layers of meaning under stuff I say. If any of you are Star Trek people, and I am, I love Star Trek, there's a Vulcan chess game that has 3 dimensions, and it's very complicated, and a lot of alcoholic families run like that. And I'm not that Byzantine. I kind of am direct, and although I can be Byzantine under pressure. Byzantine. Hidden, crafty, cunning, cruel, Byzantine. So it took me a while to realize that when they said Sean is a character, what they meant was don't let him drive. So I didn't know that. On the Swedish Lutheran side of the family, we didn't have alcoholics either. We had characters. We had nervous people. That was it. The Irish are the characters, the Swedes are the nervous people. It's very complicated. And I would have some relatives who were so nervous they'd be hospitalized. And then they'd dry them out and come back and no longer be nervous. My mom on one occasion said that her own mother was a very nervous person. And Swedish farm family, long ago, many children. And my mom on one occasion called me and was a little concerned about one of the neighbors. This is in San Jose. This fellow would park his car on the middle of the lawn and lie down next to it and go to sleep. And what did I think? And I said, does he drink? And she said, of course not, but he's very nervous. So I had to learn, part of recovery for me has been learning how to be cautious of circumlocution and euphemism and beating around the bush. I have to be careful of all those things. And one of the things I like about the program is most of us are pretty direct, and most of us say pretty direct things, and I find that very helpful. I like Dr. Silkworth's description of alcoholism, where it's an allergy of the body and an obsession of the mind. And I believe it's an illness, not a moral problem. When I hear that someone has relapsed into alcoholism, the way I hear that is the cancer's back. I've had another stroke. Blood pressure off the chart. That's how I hear that. And when someone relapses, I don't run up to them and say, what happened? It's not useful. The cancer's back. And treatment's available. And I hope you get well. I had to get sober first myself before I could find Al-Anon. And I was sober for several years before I realized how much I needed Al-Anon. Some of us from complicated families go into the helping professions. You know who you are. We are social workers, we're nurses. Not just nurses, we're nurses in intensive care unit nurses. Kind of reminds us of home, you know? We joined the Marines, not the Coast Guard, the Marines. We like pressure. We go into the police department, we go into the clergy, we become teachers. And we want to be helpful. And we don't know how to take care of ourselves. So a lot of us, with the highest of ideals and the greatest of emotional stability and deep generosity, go into demanding professions, and we give and we give and we give and we give. And they take and take and take and take. And we become exhausted and burned out, and then they demand more. And some of us have been known to get a little angry. I'm a member of a religious community. We're teachers in the Catholic Church, and I always wanted to be a high school teacher, which is kind of like being a Marine. I mean, it is. You deserve combat pay, you know, you're right there on the front lines. And I really like teaching, but I didn't have any self-care skills. I went in with both feet, and I was constantly up and hyper and manic for a long period of time, and then experienced a pretty deep burnout. And it wasn't my fault, and I hated you. So I spent a weekend with a group of people in Riverside, California. I was giving some talks, and they were being nice to me and listening. And this is years and years and years and years ago. And Saturday night, they had a meeting for the AAs and Al-Anons. And they let the AAs let the Al-Anons speak, you know, which is so generous of them. And we won't take up much room, you know, if you can just let us come. And I was going in and out, doing my own little program there, and I heard a man speak. His wife was the alcoholic, and this was a man, and they'd been married a long, long time, and he said, in Al-Anon, I am learning how to live with a crazy person without going crazy. I heard that. Now, it's possible that I have been around women who have said that many, 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 many times. But I sometimes don't hear women. I don't want to shock you on that, but what do they know? When a man said it, I heard it, and I was just shocked that, because I knew it applied to me. I was feeling frantic and desperate and exhausted and mad. I like mad. So I decided I would start going to some Al-Anon meetings, and I called my sponsor, who's also an adult child of an alcoholic. Terry's father died when Terry was 6 or 7. His father died on a slip. And I said, I need to go to some Al-Anon, and there was an Al-Anon meeting. I was living in Los Angeles at this time. There was an Al-Anon meeting down the street on Wilshire Boulevard at St. James Church, I think. And so I went, and this meeting was all women. There were 3 men. We sat in the back. And the woman who was secretary of this meeting had been secretary of this meeting for 200 or 300 years. And she knew a lot. And she was kind of a combination of Martha Stewart and Heloise, you know, and so much practical life experience. And the format of the meeting was they would read, you know, in Al-Anon we read 400 or 500 pages of material so that no one is left out. And then, and we would like to say, please don't be crazy here and leave your guns at the door. Then the people in the meeting would present their problems to her, and she would solve them. Now, in her benefit, she was smart, and she knew a lot of stuff, but that's not Al-Anon. That's North Korea. You know? And what we learn in Al-Anon, we don't give advice. I don't know if you should get married or divorced or move in or move out. I'm amazed I'm wearing clean underwear. You know, I mean, I don't know what you should do with your life. I can tell you my experiences, but I don't know what you should do. And I can only talk from my experience. I sponsor a couple of men in the program, and a couple of them are married with kids. And when they have kid stuff, I say, don't ask me, go find some guys who have kids. They've been there. I've seen the movie, but they've been there. I don't know, you know. It's so nice to say, I don't know. Let's find out. Let me know. Anyway, I started going to a few other meetings where people did share experience, strength, and hope, and traditions were observed. And I learned some things about self-care and survival. Sure learned a lot about me. My rescuing needs. I do get attached to some people. Most people I don't care that much about, but some people I can really get very focused on. These are the people I'm allergic to. I have a special devotion to heroin addicts about 9 days off the needle. I want to pay their rent. I want to make sure they're taken care of. I want to cut their meat for them. I want to take care of them. I have a niece who's also in recovery, and she's only attracted, she'll be at a meeting, and if a man suddenly looks good to her, she knows that he has stopped taking his medication. She only likes men who are spiraling up, you know, and so I have to know my craziness, know my craziness. And I have to know that so many things are none of my business. I have an opinion on everything. And I have written a couple of presidents and a couple of governors and an archbishop or two trying to clarify things. But I don't usually do that anymore. I started coming to Al-Anon, and one of the first slogans I heard that I had to think about and write down was the slogan that read, "Act, don't react." I'm a great reactor. I'm the youngest, and I learned to read atmospheres and moods, and I can second guess you and third guess you, and I can read your mind, and I can know what's going on, and I have a little bit of Henry Kissinger in me, where I think I should be the intermediary between warring factions. So, let's talk to this group, let's talk to that group, and then I wonder why I'm shot at by both sides. And that's when I have to remember that a lot of things are none of my business. I like adrenaline. Some of us do. We like excitement. It's a thrill. Let's do that again. When I first started coming to Al-Anon, looking for the right meeting, it's really hard to find the right meeting because there are just so many people I disapprove of. But getting to a meeting. But what I started listening to was some tapes. This is not before the days of CD. I started listening to tapes, and one of my Al-Anon mentors was a woman named Blanche from Texas. Now, I have occasional problems with the state of Texas. I used to get drunk whenever Lyndon Johnson talked, for example. So I have baggage. But I would listen to this tape, and Blanche was full of help. She was a teacher. She had perfect grammar. And I listened to her over and over and over again, like you do for someone who's a good teacher. And Blanche, in this one talk, talked about things she used to believe that are no longer true. And one of the things that she used to believe was God helps those who help themselves. God helps those who help themselves. And then Blanche said, you know, that's not true. God does not help those who help themselves. God helps those who ask. And I had to learn how to start asking. See, I don't like asking for myself. I can ask for you and I can fight for you, but I don't want to be front in line. You know, what will people say? Blanche said, it's not a question of me first, but it is a question of my turn. And sometimes it's my turn. Shocking. Blanche said, in Al-Anon, we learn how to keep our sails out of other people's wind. I listened to that tape a lot. And then a few years later, I was asked to come into the heart of Texas and speak at a conference. I was one of the other speakers for the other program, and they had a speaker's table, and I showed up late, as is my wont, and I sat next to this lady, and I said, "Hi, I'm Tom," and she said, "Hi, I'm Blanche," and I fell on my knees and started kissing her hands, which is perhaps an overreaction to meeting a favorite speaker, you know, but we became best friends. She liked it. Act, don't react. I was ordained a priest in 1978. In fact, on April 1st, 1978, and my first job was at the Jesuit parish in Hollywood, which is the Church of the Blessed Sacrament on Sunset Boulevard between Highland and Vine. The big three industries in the parish are narcotics, tourism, and prostitution. And tourists, of course, who are interested in all three. And I was there, and the place is overwhelming. It's just overwhelming with need. We're open all the time. We have 5 or 7 priests on staff. The church never closes. There's a lot of stuff going on every day. People coming to the front door asking for food, asking for this, asking for that. There's a lot of crises. It's one of the only churches open in the area, so a lot of emergencies come there. And for me, an emergency is interesting. Sure used to be when I was younger and had the energy for it. Well, I couldn't say no, and I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't take time off. And within a short amount of time, I was pretty crazy. I was very hungry, I was very angry, I was very lonely, I was very tired, and I'm sure all of this was about me. And there was a motel down the street, there are several, and the manager of the hotel, we had some families stay there on occasion who needed housing, and the manager of the hotel was a guy named Buck Love. That was his name. Anyway, he called me about 1 a.m. one morning, and one of the girls who worked in the neighborhood had been stabbed in the room, and she wanted the priest, and I was on duty for 24 hours like a doctor, 24 hours on, 40 hours off. And I ran down, and there she was, and there was blood everywhere, mirrors on the ceilings. I was quite surprised. And I hope she lived, I don't know, but we spent some time. But emergency, police, ambulance. I pumped with adrenaline for the next 3 days. That's high. Life and death and sirens. Well, what goes up comes down. And on the other side of a lot of adrenaline excitement, of course, is exhaustion and depression. And one of the things that led me into Al-Anon was that without drugs and alcohol, I was on the roller coaster. I'd go way up and way down and way up and way down and way up and way down, and that's how I knew I was having a good time. And it just got to be too much. And the image that I heard, sometimes we get so involved with the craziest people in town because they're cute. I don't have to be on their roller coaster. Nor do I have to demand they come off their roller coaster. I can wait at the gate. And when they roar by, I can wave hello. And they'll know where I am when they're done. See?
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
Oof. Alcoholism is a lot like dancing with a gorilla. You're not done dancing until the gorilla is done dancing. It took me a while to realize how deadly the gorilla was. A lot of people get killed by the gorilla. But I understand the cuteness of a good gorilla and how much fun you can have for a while before you're killed. So I understand that. But soon as the gorilla gets his arms around any of us, the gorilla's calling the shots. If you're clean and sober today, it means the gorilla has let go. If the gorilla has let go, get out of the cage. And don't go back into the cage even when the gorilla starts humming your song. See? Which it does. Oh, I'll never go back. It was so disgusting. You know, with those police and the goats, oh, I'll never go back. And then you hear music, and you end up in the cage. One of my friends is a guy in Vegas. His name is Wally, great big fellow. And he says, I don't want to dance with the gorilla, Tom. I just want to pet it a little bit, you know? Now, we who love alcoholics, we visit the zoo a lot. And we walk around and we look at the bears. Bears are nice. We look at the lions. We look at the giraffes. I'm very pro-giraffe myself. I have fed giraffes, and they have these enormous tongues, and they're quite exciting. Giraffes. But then we walk by the gorilla cage, and we see the person we love dancing with the gorilla. It might be our mom or our dad. Might be our spouse. Might be our brother or sister, might be one of our kids, but we walk by and we look in and we react with horror and terror and rage, and we want to do something. So we get into the cage ourselves and we start vacuuming, you know? Vacuum, 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 vacuum. Let's hang some curtains, curtains, curtains. Nice, nutritious meals. Oh, look here. And when that doesn't help, we try to get between the gorilla and the person we love, and the gorilla can turn on us and yank our arms and legs off. The casualty rate among women and men who love alcoholics is real high. So we have a program too, called Al-Anon. And a lot of Al-Anon, not all of it, but a lot of Al-Anon simply says, stay out of the cage. But I only want to vacuum. We know. See, we know. And vacuuming makes the gorilla mad. So instead of that, why don't you meet us? We're over here meeting with the giraffes. See, these are the giraffes. And we're going to have a conversation. See? A much friendlier animal. I find on a regular basis I need to ask God for help. This is a big theme in recovery. I cannot fix this myself. I cannot sort this out myself. I cannot think my way out of my craziness. And a lot of my craziness is cellular. I mean, trust me, I'm a helper. I got a call once from a fellow I had coffee with. I'm in Oakland, he's in Santa Cruz. It's an hour and a half to 2 hours away. It's about 10 p.m. He was arrested that afternoon for the sale and possession of cocaine. And could I come and bail him out? Music to my ears. This means he likes me, you know? I can be useful. I'm sure he'll never do it again. So, but I've been to Al-Anon for some years now, like 8 or 10 or 12, you know, beyond foreplay in Al-Anon. I have some sense of my own craziness, and I know that when I start getting the adrenaline pumping and I'm excited and I see the movie in my head, it's a bad sign, not a good sign. And so I said, and he said, I said, how much is your bail? $1 billion. And I said, I don't have that. And he said, you can bring the deed to the house, the mortgage to the house or whatever. Which I think upon reflection means he's done this before. What do you think? So, I know in a circumstance like this, I cannot trust my own decision-making process. Let me call you back. I hung up. I called my sponsor. He was out, of course. I called 2 or 3 other people. I talked to 2 or 3 other people, and they all said, Tom, he's in jail for the sale and possession of cocaine. This is why we have jail. So, really? I completely forgot that part. He should stay in jail. Really? Well, after the 3rd person told me that, I called him back and I said, I cannot help you. And then, because I did not yet have a perfect Al-Anon program, I encouraged him to keep calling. I said, I'm sure there's someone who can help you. I shouldn't have said that. I hung up, I went to the bathroom and threw up. Because I really like the help. Even if it kills you. Even if it kills you. I come into Al-Anon with a couple of things going on for me. One of which was exhaustion. Deep exhaustion. And when I get exhausted, I don't have much energy for faith, hope, or charity. I'm just a train wreck. Sometimes when I notice that I don't believe in God and I hate everybody and it's your fault, sometimes what that means is I'm exhausted. It doesn't mean I need to do another 4th step. It means I need to get some sleep and a day off and some time with friends. Really? Well, shouldn't I write all the literature out in longhand? Do that too. But that simple stuff of don't get too hungry, too angry, too lonely, or too tired sure applies to this Al-Anon. Because I can skip meals and eat crap and not contact friends and cut back on sleep and do all those other things and then wonder why the day isn't going well. And when I was in my 30s, I said, well, I can be too hungry. I'm tough. I can be too hungry. I can be too angry. I'm resourceful. I can be too hungry, angry, lonely. I'm still okay. But when all 4 are in play, then I'd better take action. And I discovered in my 40s, 50s, and 60s that any one of them does me in. Any one of them. My perceptions change, my understanding changes, my rhythm changes, and I need to do stuff. So one of the things I first started doing in Al-Anon was when I went to bed, I turned off the phone. Well, what if someone calls? They'll call someone else. I try to get enough sleep. And when I don't have enough sleep, I'm in trouble. I try to watch the anger, and I'd like to talk a little bit about anger because it's a scary subject for a lot of us. But I'm one of those guys that gets angry a lot. I mentioned that at a meeting, and someone said, well, that's not very spiritual. If you were really spiritual, you wouldn't be angry. And I thanked them for the insight. I need a program that tells me what to do with my anger, because I don't like bullies, I don't like idiots, I don't like fools, so you can imagine how angry I am all the time. And sometimes, and I'm sure one or two of you may identify this, when I have been generous and giving and generous and giving and generous and giving, it's so I could control you. And that the outcome would come my way. And I would be generous and giving and it wouldn't happen my way, and I'd be generous and giving and it wouldn't happen my way, and then I'd just get mad at you. And I've had to learn in Al-Anon that I get to be generous and giving, but I am not in charge of consequences or results. Those are in God's good hands. I ask for help. At an earlier time when I would pray, I would sometimes give God directions. Have you ever done that? God, can I give you a little feedback? Over here and over there. And instead, I just now ask for help. I was talking to someone a while ago, and this was a very serious person, like a lot of us are, very serious people. And she wanted to know how to ask for help right. And I said, watch carefully. We were sitting down, I closed my eyes, I breathed in a couple of times, and then I said, help! And I find that good to do. Also, if you aren't in a place where you can say anything, you could just wave a white handkerchief, which my sponsor regularly recommends for me, as a sign of, I've stopped fighting, I've surrendered, I'm done, I'm done. I'm not in charge. I'm not in charge. And for some of us, power is the drug. I knew a fellow in Al-Anon, he was very crazy, much crazier than me. He was so crazy, I noticed how crazy he was. And he knew that whenever he was awake, he was in charge of things and running things. And he was a devout fellow. And at night, when he prayed, his prayer went something like this: oh God, I'm going to sleep now, so you keep an eye on everything, but don't worry, I'll be back. And he meant it, you know? I've had some great mentors in Al-Anon, and one of them told me when she first came to Al-Anon, it was all wrong. She didn't like the literature. She rewrote everything and came off with books of suggestions, which is deeply Al-Anon crazy. You know, let me run your life for you. And she would speak well at meetings. She had a lot of self-confidence, and a lot of people wanted her input. And please run my life. And she would. And she said, well, you know, get the Al-Anon literature. Then here's my own personal book, which was like 44 pages, single-space type, something like that. And she, slowly she started getting better. Slowly. Think glaciers, you know, slowly. And the 44-page book became a 10-page book, became a 3-page pamphlet. And then she said, Tom, now when I sponsor someone, I tell them only one thing. I only have one piece of advice to give people I sponsor. I said, what is it? She said, I tell them, call before you shoot. And of course, the alcoholic would say, well, who are you shooting? You know? Sometimes I get so angry, I don't know what to do. And for me, anger is a physical thing. So my anger has turned me into a gardener. I dig things, I plant things, I cut things back. I was talking to a young man I taught him when he was a high school boy. His mom was a bad alcoholic. He came to see me one day, and I was out in the yard doing stuff, chopping things. And he wanted to talk about Mom, and we talked a little bit about Mom. I just listened, you know, and this boy had a lot of stuff. And there was a huge holly bush, and holly bushes are full of thorns, and they bite, and they attack, and they snarl at you when you walk by. And I said, Raymond, could you just trim the bush back a little? He dug it out by its roots. Felt better afterwards. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. I've also been to an Al-Anon meeting where they used these W-A-I-T. Remember W-A-I-T. What's that stand for? Why am I talking? Now that applies to those of us who need to over-explain, you know. If I just explain this to you one more time, you'll get it and stop your bad behavior. Say, why am I talking? I was at a meeting in Dallas, Texas, and a fellow talked about the Serenity Prayer. And in the Serenity Prayer, they talk about the things we can change and the things we can't change. And this fellow said, I found out there are 3 things I cannot change. I cannot change you. I cannot change the past. And I cannot change the truth. What can I change? I can change 3 things. I can change my thinking. I can change my attitudes. And I can change my behavior. Not right away. But that's where I want to focus my attention in. On February 21st, I was in Los Angeles, rental car, driving around. I got distracted, and I smacked into another car. No one's hurt, but there's trouble, you know. And I again, adrenaline roaring through me, and no one was hurt in the other car, and everything was going to work out fine, and I have insurance. But the first thing I knew is I needed the power greater than myself, so I called AAA. Help. And then I called my sponsor. And then I waited and I took care of things, and there's insurance forms you have to fill out, and the insurance people call you. And they all ask this question, whose fault was the accident? And I told them, it was mine. And there was this pause like, are you sure that you just said that? It was my fault. Then they asked me again, are you, and this means my carelessness, and I'm a careless person, resulted in an accident, and I get to clean up the mess. That's part of having a program. It didn't feel good saying any of that. I didn't feel suddenly liberated when I said it was my fault, because I knew this would be much money. In my Al-Anon group, we have a few things we do. We're a small men's stag. We read the literature. We comment on things. And I have learned some things there. In Al-Anon, we have slogans. One of the slogans is live and let live. How vitally important. I get to live, and so do you. I get to make mistakes, so do you. I get to have experiences, so do you. Live and let live. Easy does it. Easy does it. That took me years to figure out. What? Easy does what? Thank you. I've also learned, and I've seen this I haven't seen this in the literature, but I've seen this in Al-Anon practice. Sometimes the right response when someone says something profoundly stupid is just to say, oh. In fact, I have been to parts of the country where it's referred to as the Al-Anon. Oh. My mom could have used 100,000 Al-Anon meetings. She was a great worrier and fretter. And she had something, this only happened on the phone, but she would talk in the wrong tone of voice, and I would suddenly be 11 years old and mad. And she, moms, you know you've got one. So, and I would get enraged, and I would just get so I couldn't. So someone in Al-Anon suggested this. Right by my phone, I have a 3x5 card, and on the 3x5 cards were these words: "Let me call you back." And then I'd hang up and walk around and talk and maybe have a glass of water, maybe pull a few weeds. And then when I was closer to 57 years old, I'd call her back. And we would have a conversation. What else can I tell you? Well, for me, Al-Anon's a pretty subtle program. I have troubles with relationships. I get angry about other people. I get angry about the United States. I get angry about my church. I get angry about the weather. And I don't know what to do. And Al-Anon tells me that I have to take care of my own acre, my own place, my own stuff. I'm really very willing to pull the weeds out of your lawn. But I'm not willing to pull the weeds out of my own lawn. So I have to know that this is my own program. I've got to take care of this stuff and then encourage you to take care of stuff and not to give advice and not lecture and not harp and not preach. It just doesn't work. I live in a community with several other people, and 5 altogether. And one of them is also an adult child of an alcoholic, and he has tendencies that can drive me crazy. And when he's melting down like some adult children of alcoholics do, I've learned to let him and back off and not engage for a while. Let's just, and literally back off. And a couple hours later, we can have a conversation. But I don't want to get into a conversation where he's angry and I'm angry and we're at the top of the stairs. Because I have a little tendency just to push someone down the stairs. And in my home group meeting, we say this: we don't push anyone down the stairs today. You can always push them down the stairs tomorrow. But we're not gonna push them down the stairs today. And that has saved lives. I'm a worrier, and this is the last thing I'll talk about worry. And sometimes when I'm worried, I think I'm taking action. And I've learned that I'm not taking action, I'm just wasting energy. And the older I get, the less energy I have to waste on things that don't matter. So when I find myself worrying about someone specifically, I remember a story told that comes out of the Russian Orthodox tradition. And it's the story of what they call in Russian the starets. And the starets is a holy man, a stranger. The American version of it is the Lone Ranger. You know, who is that masked man trouble in the village, someone shows up, takes care of things, moves on. Well, I know some people I worry about. And I hold them in light. And I ask God to send them some stranger who can talk to them, because I can't. But there's a stranger out there somewhere who can make the connection. God works through strangers all the time. There was a rumor out that one of my nieces was drinking pretty badly. And you know how uncles hear rumors. She and I went out for dinner one night. We did that every so often. And because I had some kind of Al-Anon program, I didn't ask her 50 questions or make her give me a blood and urine sample before dinner, you know. This was a woman in her 30s at the time. But we were out at a Mexican restaurant in San Francisco, and she said, so Tom, I've started therapy. Oh. And I've been talking to this therapist, and I talked about the alcoholism in the family. And after I saw her for a couple of times, the therapist said, Mary, we've talked about everyone's drinking in the family but yours. Oh. So the therapist suggested I go to an Al-Anon meeting, an AA meeting. And I went to an AA meeting somewhere in the city, and I hated it, and I hated everyone in the room, and they ended with the Lord's Prayer, and I hated that. And I ran out of the door, and I ran to my car, and I was going to go back to my apartment and get drunk. And I got out of my car and went to another meeting, and Tom, I've got 9 days. And I said, oh. Well, why didn't you call me? I know everything, and I know every therapist in the city. Blah, 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 blah. One of her sisters and I went out for lunch, or dinner, I guess, around the same time, and we were both nervous. We hadn't been in each other's company in a long time. I knew her as a little girl. Now she was a young woman. And we were polite and awkward at a Russian vegetarian restaurant in Berkeley. And she stopped and looked at me and said, Tom, she's the daughter of my oldest brother. She said, Tom, are my parents crazy? And I said to her, you can talk about your parents if I can talk about my parents. And we had an Al-Anon conversation as two people who've been there. Life-changing. Al-Anon takes a long time. I was talking to someone who said, but I just don't like my Al-Anon meetings. And I said, no one likes chemotherapy either. But it'll save your life. And I need to remember that one day at a time. And to celebrate this business of being alive. It's a great thing. It's a great gift. Enjoy the day.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on, I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst and one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.